There is a painful moment when you realize that the harder you try to make people see your worth, the less they seem to notice it. You explain your intentions, you defend your decisions, you clarify what you meant. And whenever someone doubts you, something inside you immediately demands that you prove them wrong. But here is the uncomfortable truth. The need to prove yourself can quietly become a form of weakness. Not because you are incapable, not because you should never defend yourself, but because the moment you desperately need someone else to recognize your value, you give them the power to decide how valuable you feel. Someone misunderstands you, and you feel compelled to correct every detail. Someone stops appreciating you, and instead of stepping back, you work even harder to earn their approval. You may call it confidence, you may call it standing up for yourself, but sometimes, underneath all of it, there is something much more fragile. The fear that if you don't prove your worth, people will decide that you have none. And that fear can control you without making a sound. The Stoics understood something most people learn only after years of emotional exhaustion. Marcus Aurelius lived among people who praised him, criticized him, misunderstood him, and demanded things from him. Yet he kept returning to a deeper question: what kind of person am I choosing to be? Not, how do I make everyone understand me? That difference changes everything. Because when your attention shifts from proving yourself to living according to your principles, something inside you becomes quieter. You stop chasing every accusation. You stop turning every disagreement into a courtroom. You stop feeling that. But there is a deeper reason we become addicted to proving ourselves, one that has very little to do with other people. It begins with what you secretly believe about yourself. And once you understand that hidden belief, you'll understand why some people spend their entire lives explaining themselves, yet still never feel truly respected. The need to prove yourself rarely begins with other people. It usually begins with a private fear inside you. What if they are right about me? That question is more powerful than it looks. You need someone to admit that you were right. And when they refuse to give you that validation, you try harder. You explain more. You argue longer. You show more, you give more, and slowly, without realizing it, your peace becomes dependent on other people's reactions. That's where the trap begins. Imagine someone dismisses something you worked hard for. A secure person can hear the criticism, decide whether there is anything useful in it, and move forward. But when your identity is attached to being recognized, criticism feels completely different. It doesn't sound like, "That decision was wrong." It feels like you are not good enough. And suddenly, you are no longer protecting a decision, you are protecting your identity. That's why some people cannot walk away from an argument. They don't necessarily need to win the argument, they need to win back their sense of worth. And that is a completely different battle. Epictetus understood the way out. Some things belong to you, your choices, your judgments, your actions, your character. Other people's opinions do not. Yet most people reverse this. They obsess over what someone thinks while neglecting the only thing they truly control: how they conduct themselves. Think about the freedom that returns when you stop trying to control the story other people tell about you. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting disrespect. It means refusing to make someone else's perception responsible for your emotional stability. Because the moment you no longer need everyone to understand your worth, you stop behaving like someone who needs permission to have it. But now we reach the part most people never notice. If constantly proving yourself comes from insecurity, why can proving yourself actually make people respect you less instead of more? There is a reason people often respect quiet confidence more than constant self-defense. When someone is secure in who they are, they don't need to turn every interaction into a demonstration of their value. But when someone desperately needs to appear important, intelligent, strong, or successful, people can often sense the insecurity beneath the performance. And this is where the paradox becomes uncomfortable. The harder you try to convince people that you deserve respect, the more you can reveal how badly you need their approval. Imagine two people entering the same room. One constantly talks about what he has achieved, how much he knows, how difficult his life has been. He listens without needing to dominate. He doesn't rush to correct every misunderstanding. Who feels more powerful? Usually the second person. Not because silence automatically makes someone strong, but because restraint communicates something deeper. I don't need to perform my worth for you. Seneca understood the danger of living for other people's approval. When your peace depends on reputation, praise becomes addictive and criticism becomes threatening. You stop managing yourself and start managing your image. You say yes when you want to say no. You explain decisions that never required explanation. You keep talking long after your point has already been made. And eventually, you may believe you're protecting your dignity while actually giving your dignity away. Real strength is not making everyone acknowledge your value. Real strength is knowing your value even when nobody acknowledges it. That changes how you respond to criticism. If someone says you failed, examine the facts. If they're right, learn. If they're wrong, continue. Either way, you don't need to destroy your peace forcing them to admit it. This is one of the deepest forms of Stoic discipline. Let reality speak for you. Your consistency can speak. Your results can speak. And once you stop trying to convince everyone, something unexpected happens. You begin seeing clearly who respects you naturally, and who only respects you when you perform for them. But that leads to an even deeper question. What happens when you stop trying to be completely understood and become so grounded that misunderstanding can no longer control you? The Stoics never taught you to become cold, silent, or indifferent to everything around you. They praise you, and you feel valuable. They criticize you, and you question yourself. They ignore you, and your mood changes. They misunderstand you, and you spend hours trying to correct their perception. You may think you're controlling the situation because you're explaining yourself, but you're actually being controlled by it. The Stoic response is different. Before reacting, ask, is this something I control? You control what you say. You control your actions. You control whether your behavior matches your effort. That distinction sounds simple. Living by it is not. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to govern his own character rather than become consumed by the behavior of others. And that is the question the Stoic mind keeps returning to. What is mine to govern? Your character is yours. Your intentions are yours. Your effort is yours. Their interpretation is theirs. Their appreciation is theirs. Once you understand this, proving yourself begins to lose its attraction. Your own conduct, and this doesn't mean rejecting criticism. A Stoic can hear something painful without becoming defensive. If there is truth in it, he improves. If there isn't, he lets it pass. That is the difference between defensiveness and self-respect. Defensiveness says, I need you to believe I am right. Self-respect says, I will make sure I am acting rightly. One depends on another person's judgment. The other depends on your own character. And when you finally make that shift, silence stops feeling like weakness. It's when someone deliberately misunderstands you, when they question your character, when they say something that makes you want to defend yourself immediately. That is where most people lose their composure. Someone accuses you of something you didn't do, and your instinct is to explain. Someone questions your intentions, and suddenly you're giving details. Someone says you're not capable, and you feel the need to show them everything you can do. Your mind says, if I don't respond, they'll believe it, but ask yourself something deeper. Why does their belief matter so much? If you know the truth about your actions, why must another person confirm it before you can feel at peace? This is where silence becomes emotional discipline. If you know the truth about your actions, why must another person confirm it before you can feel at peace? This is where silence becomes emotional discipline. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Because some people aren't looking for understanding, they're looking for another explanation to attack. Give them one explanation, they demand another. Give them evidence, they question it. Give them your reasons, They attack your reasons. At some point, you are no longer communicating. You are auditioning for approval. And that is exhausting. The Stoic approach isn't to become careless about your reputation. It's to understand that reputation is unstable. Today, people may admire you. If your emotional state rises and falls with that movement, you have surrendered your peace to something you cannot control. Think about how much energy returns when you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Energy to work, energy to improve, energy to build something meaningful, energy to become the person you've been trying to convince others you already are. But understand this, silence is not weakness. You can correct a serious lie. You can defend someone who needs protection. That difference is everything. One response comes from strength, the other comes from insecurity. So the next time you feel the urge to prove yourself, pause and ask, am I responding because this truly matters, or because I cannot tolerate being misunderstood? That single question can prevent hours of unnecessary conflict. Because the strongest person in the room isn't always the one with the best argument. Sometimes it's the person who realizes they have nothing to prove. There comes a point when you realize that silence isn't about having nothing to say. It's about knowing that not everything deserves access to your energy. There comes a point when you realize that silence isn't about having nothing to say. It's about knowing that not everything deserves access to your energy. A detached person can care deeply, love deeply, and still refuse to become controlled by the outcome. He can hear criticism without immediately reacting. He can experience rejection without begging for another chance. He can lose someone's approval without losing himself. That is a very different kind of strength. Imagine someone suddenly stops giving you the attention they once gave you. Your instinct may be to chase an explanation. What if you stopped chasing and allowed their behavior to reveal what their words never could? You stop chasing people. You stop trying to manufacture respect. You stop turning every silence into an emergency, and you watch, because people reveal themselves through patterns, not promises. Marcus Aurelius understood that the mind becomes disturbed when we demand that reality behave according to our preferences. You want people to appreciate you. You want them to understand your intentions. You want your efforts to be recognized, but reality does not owe you any of that. And the sooner you accept this, the sooner you become free. Detachment doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you give your best effort without making your identity dependent on the result. You can love someone without begging them to stay. You can help someone without demanding gratitude. You can speak your truth without forcing someone to accept it. You can walk away without needing them to admit they were wrong. And that last one matters more than most people realize, because sometimes the closure you keep searching for will never come from another person. You have to give it to yourself. Your responsibility is your character, not controlling the world's reaction to you. Once you understand that, silence becomes easier. You don't need to respond immediately. You don't need to win. And then something remarkable happens. The energy you once spent proving your worth becomes available for building it. Instead of asking, how do I make them see my value? You start asking, what can I do today that makes me respect myself more? That question changes everything. But understanding detachment is only the beginning, because knowing what not to do is useless unless you have a practical system for what to do instead. The moment you stop proving yourself, you need something stronger to replace the habit. If you're disciplined, let your consistency show it. If you're trustworthy, let your behavior prove it. If you're capable, let your work create the evidence. Words can introduce who you are. Repeated actions reveal who you actually are. Second, pause before defending yourself. When someone challenges you, don't answer from the first emotional impulse. Pause. Ask, is there something useful in this criticism? If there is, learn from it. If there isn't, let it pass. That pause is where emotional control begins. Third, stop correcting every misunderstanding. Some misunderstandings matter. Some don't. If someone genuinely, but if they've already decided how they want to see you, repeating yourself, rarely changes their mind. Your peace is more valuable than winning an argument with someone committed to misunderstanding you. Fourth, let your results speak slowly. You don't need to announce every goal. You don't need to tell everyone what you're becoming. Work quietly, improve quietly, build quietly. There is a different kind of confidence that develops when you've tested yourself, not when other people have applauded you. One event does not get to become your identity. And finally, whenever you feel the urge to prove yourself, ask, would I still do this if nobody ever knew about it? If the answer is yes, you're probably acting from your values. If the answer is no, ask yourself why recognition has become part of the reward. That question exposes motives you may have been hiding from yourself. Because Stoicism isn't about appearing powerful. It's about becoming so internally grounded that you no longer need to perform strength. You choose your battles instead of reacting to every challenge. You speak when your words have purpose and stay silent when they don't. You stop chasing respect and start becoming respectable. And if this way of thinking is helping you see yourself differently, subscribe, not for motivation but to keep building this kind of mental strength with us. Because eventually you discover something proving yourself could never give you, peace that does not depend on being understood. But there is one final transformation. The goal was never to make people respect you. The goal was to become the kind of person who no longer needs their respect, to know who he is. The greatest freedom comes when you finally understood. Being respected meant correcting every misunderstood. Confidence meant showing people what you could do. But real strength is much quieter. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't become desperate when someone walks away. It simply remains grounded. Think about the version of yourself who used to feel the need to explain everything. Someone questioned your intentions, and you immediately defended yourself. Someone doubted your ability, and you wanted to prove them wrong. Someone doubted your ability. No need to make someone regret underestimating you. That is not weakness. That is emotional freedom. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly returned to one foundation. Your character is measured by what you choose to do, not by what others choose to think about you. And that principle changes the way you live. You stop working just to be noticed. You stop improving just to prove your critics wrong. You stop becoming strong for an audience. Your boundaries become clearer, not because you chased their respect, because you stopped chasing it. Your words become more meaningful, because you no longer waste them. Your presence becomes stronger, because you are no longer performing for the room. But don't misunderstand the lesson. The goal isn't to become someone who never speaks, never defends himself, or never cares what people think. The goal is to become someone who chooses when caring is worth the cost. That is Stoic power. You can explain yourself when explanation serves truth. You can remain silent when silence protects your peace. So the next time someone doubts you, remember, you don't need to become louder. You don't need to prove more. You don't need to make everyone understand. Let your life become the evidence. And if this message spoke to something you've been struggling with, comment one thing you're choosing to stop proving to people. Then subscribe if you want more Stoic lessons that help you build this kind of quiet strength. Because the moment you stop living for other people's approval is the moment you finally start living on your own terms.